Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Lieutenant Stephen Rogers, and thank you for joining me this evening on This Week in North America. In a moment, I'll be speaking with two extraordinary women here from the United States who decided to take the gifts and talents that God had given them to try to make some sense of what's going on across this country and around the world with regard to public discourse, discussions, and some of the things that are influencing us to do things we should do, and probably more so, things we shouldn't do. They'll have some advice with regarding to communication with our teenagers, our children in this day and age. I really believe that you're going to learn a lot, as I did during my conversation with them. Then, when I'm finished with them, we're going to have Wayne Peters from Canada on, and we're going to talk about a host of issues regarding that great country. So I'm going to get right to it, folks. So let's go to our first guest and see you in a minute or two. Have taken it upon their shoulders to help solve some of the problems that we not only in America are facing, but our good neighbors in Canada and around the world. I'd like to introduce you now, Dr. Gerri Budd. Thank you for joining us. And Professor DonnaLynn, thank you for joining us this evening. Professor Budd, well, you know, when my wife and I were at the Chestnut Cafe in Nutley, New Jersey, little did we know that we were going to be sitting next to you and your small family there. And we had a discussion about the state of affairs today with regard to the political discourse. So I'd like to talk to you and DonnaLynn about that. But if you could first tell us, our audience, a little bit about yourself, your background, and then DonnaLynn, if you would follow up with your background also. Dr. Budd.
Okay, great. Thank you. Hi. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having us. This is a great opportunity. My name is Gerri Budd. I am from Nutley, New Jersey. I was raised in Brooklyn. I've been teaching at William Patterson University for over 20 years now. And in 2021, DonnaLynn invited me to form a company for education, training, grant writing, and business-to-business service on diversity training and communication and building healthy work environments and school environments. And we've been doing that for 2 years now. We've had some success working with We're working with a small town in Massachusetts and a couple of towns and educational organizations here in New Jersey. And we are all about this conversation and ways to connect and getting people sort of off the screen and talking to each other.
Well, to begin with, before we get to the professor there, I too am a Brooklyn boy. I was born and raised on Bay Ridge, Brooklyn, and an alumni of William Patterson University. So what do you think of that? Professor, I'm going to hand you the mic right now.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having us. I actually started working on Wall Street, and eventually I had my children, but I'm also a domestic violence survivor, 14 and a half years. So I became an advocate for people that didn't have the advantages I did to get out, to get to safety and whatnot. I actually did my divorce pro se. I did figure all that out. And I was invited to teach for the Women's Studies Department at William Patterson, which enabled me to give a voice for others. And I met Gerri. And then after working together for a few years, I had this idea. I kept thinking about the things I saw as I was going through. Now I volunteer with the police departments and whatnot to advocate for victims and things. But everything I saw, I said, you know what? We could create an organization that goes out and teaches people about diversity and equity and inclusion and belonging and cultural things in workplace environments, because it's just so important.
You know what I find interesting about what both of you have done, and we've advocated this on the air for the past few years. Everyone has been given by the good Lord skills and talents that they could use for the good of humanity. And we certainly believe and advocate entrepreneurship. And in my view, you did exactly that. You took the skills and the talents, and even as Professor DonnaLynn states, you took a real bad situation in your life and you turned it around for the good of many other people. So I just want to commend both of you for taking that position you have. And we've got thousands of people watching from all over the world now. And a lot of the letters I get and calls I get are people who are distressed, they're depressed, they're upset. They're inundated with negative news day in and day out. And unfortunately, it gets reduced to, even in the workplace, at home, families are being broken up, friendships are being destroyed over what I believe is a frontier as a nation, perhaps as a planet we've never been in, and that is the absolute unbelievable failure to communicate with each other with respect. And Dr. Budd, I'm going to go to you to start this part of the conversation off because we talked about it. I'm a Republican conservative. I never asked you what your background was, but after reading your website, which is very good, I believe you're a little bit more left of me, okay? But I respect you and the professor for not getting involved in the decimation of personalities and not getting involved. But, my wife and I, when we walked away from you, Dr. Budd, and your family, was that your husband that was with you?
Yes, that was my husband.
You and your husband. I told my wife, I said, did you ever meet a Democrat like that? And she said, never. I mean, so you projected something that I'm trying to help along the way also. So let's talk about it for a minute.
Sure. Our approach is that the murder of George Floyd and all of the upheaval that we saw that summer of 2020, in that conversation, there was an element missing, and the element was people who had never given thought to any of this. And we thought that one of our approaches, the way we can reach people, is to respect the fact that there are tons and tons of people who never gave diversity a thought, who never considered anything to be wrong. We all learn in school that the civil rights movement did a lot of good, solved a lot of problems. We've made a lot of progress, and real life isn't matching the online world. That's the big disconnect, I find, is the key. Our perceptions are getting flattened by our screens. So everyone will read comments, will engage online, and that's an economy. There's money to be made in keeping us outraged, keeping us clicking, keeping us forwarding, keeping us fired up about what we're seeing and reading. But when you go offline and you talk to real life people, you don't really see that. I think that the key to addressing some of this is getting people in a room, talking to each other face to face, the way it was before about 10 years ago. It's the only way in which you can really reach people, read their expressions, understand if they are sympathetic or not. I was just having this conversation with Dave, my husband, that no one we know in real life talks the way people talk online, yet we are being encouraged to think that the online mode of angry communication is the only mode that everyone's in all the time.
Professor DonnaLynn, I tend to believe that because of people being deluged from the second they get up, they grab the phone. And instead of maybe saying a prayer or kind of communicating with the family, they immediately go here. So my question to you, you're the expert, not me. Is it possible that this first impression in the morning becomes the lasting impression all day, the anger, the decimation of people? Because I'll tell you, and I've got this in letters to me, people will turn on a TV and they're listening to people, especially in leadership positions in politics, which I'll get to in a minute, using language that you wouldn't want your mom to be in a room with, you hear, and the impact on young people. So does that have a determining fact when people, this is the first thing they see, as Dr. Budd said, that they actually are communicating with a machine here?
Oh, absolutely. You're going into an irrational anger first thing in the morning, and that behavior carries on. But stop and think. I have a friend that's a nuclear biochemical warfare expert, and she always says it's not the disaster that is the disaster, but the people's reaction. So you see this news, you're not stopping and thinking it through. Does that really make sense? People aren't taking the time to breathe and to calm down and look at the facts. And I always direct my classes coming from Wall Street, let's take a look at the financial markets. Are they reacting to what you think is happening? They're not. So is what you're saying logical? So that's my thing. Go to the numbers, and what are the numbers showing us? And just, I think people should just wake up, be glad they're awake, think of something you can be grateful for that day, start your day, because then when you hear something, you're already calm and you can think it through. So,
And it's a new snap judgment. We've been witnessing the birth of a new type of bigotry. Maybe is not the right word, but the minute you hear someone is a conservative or a liberal, you have formed an opinion about their opinions, and we try to get beyond that. No matter where you sit on the political spectrum, you have colleagues, you have friends, you have coworkers, you're shopping, you're doing stuff. There's ways to see the person behind the label that we are in danger of losing unless we actively interrupt that.
As a political leader, I've always maintained that because of the offices that I held and the position I'm in now, that I have an obligation to protect the dignity of the office, to protect the dignity of the oath I took, which was to serve the people. What's bothering me is that I don't see much of that anymore, from the White House down all the way to local level governments. What's bothering me is that I see people, especially young people, starting to mimic those in leadership today. I'm talking about the name calling. I'll give you an example. I won't mention names because it wouldn't serve any purpose, but I think the example will get my point across. And I'm going to ask you to both weigh in on that. I was watching a political event about a week ago, and there were maybe 200 young people at this event. And a reporter went up to them and asked them, well, what did they think of so-and-so candidate for office? And they started chanting some vulgar names attached to that candidate. And I was appalled. I was hurt. It bothered me more so that it was young people. Now, those are 200 I saw. But what about the thousands, perhaps millions around the country that are doing the same thing? So how do we address that? How do you address that? How do we, as obviously people maybe different sides of the political line, but still here we are, we're talking, we're trying to communicate and understand each other. How do we address that? How do parents address that?
I like to explain in the classroom, once you start name calling, you've lost the argument. You can't make a change. You're done. You have shown no argument, no intelligence, and you have to learn both sides of the issue. You can't argue something that you don't understand what the other side is talking about. So you can't have a civil debate, and you can't make a change or a compromise. So I don't like to see that, and I think we both have seen that in the classroom, where behaviors have become inappropriate and nothing is accomplished. It's done. It's done.
Also, too, I think that we have to. This is a big undertaking, but we have to kind of devalue the attention economy. There was a survey put out just last year about the number one career aspiration among millennials and younger people. And the career aspiration is to be a content creator. So they're looking to create a viral moment. They're looking for some way to step through the looking glass and to be the person making content, getting picked up and maybe getting a segment on a morning talk show. Like their stepping stone to fame would be that one outrageous moment because it goes viral. And they do that because there's value attached to it. They know that YouTubers make money just by talking about what they love, and the advertising dollars come pouring in. There's got to be, just as we sort of deliberately turn toward that kind of economy, I think we have to turn away from it. Like, there's value in being of service. There's ways to do what you love while not contributing to this kind of media circus and frenzy and all the negativity and shock. It's the outrage. They know this. Facebook had internal studies showing that when people are angry, anger keeps people on the platform, and length of time on the platform is what they sell to their advertisers. So they're invested in keeping us worked up and angry and yelling at each other while they are rolling it in. And I think the first step is to make that much more widely known than it seems to be. If the kids, most teenagers resent being taken advantage of. Most teenagers are pretty sharp, parents will know. Teenagers are not the one. And when they understand that it's a game and they're the pieces being played for, I think that would lower their willingness to be commodities in the system.
I'm a little bit older than you guys, so I was around when Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill was here. Is that right? Well, then you remember.
I was on Wall Street then. I was on, yeah.
There you go. Well, Reagan and Tip O'Neill, and I talked a lot about them because I admired them. I think the only two politicians, at least in my lifetime, who would have a real good argument over an issue critical to the country, and then after that, go get some Irish whiskey and shake each other's hands.
Mm-hmm.
But in addition to that, I know that during the Reagan administration, because of the way he was and handled himself, even with an opposition with respect and honor and dignity, young people, and that's how I got attached. Young people admired this fellow. They admired his character. They admired the way he conducted himself, always protected the dignity of the office. So I guess when I was young, he had such an impression on me, I thought I'd go into politics. But today, young people, they need to know, I would suppose, when they get into politics, it's not the politics of anger and the politics of being mean-spirited. It's the politics of getting things done. Now, both of you apparently have gone down a similar road that I have gone, minus the politics of trying to get people to understand, look, we're all in this together, are we not? Aren't we in this together? I've got to tell you, I've had on this broadcast a Democrat from Atlanta, Georgia, former mayoral candidate, name is Robin Brero, and we ended up going on over 150 national news networks debating each other on a lot of issues. I mean, you could imagine we were opposed to each other on a lot of issues, but why were we on 150? We talked with each other. We listened to each other. And to your point, we found out that we agreed more on issues than we disagreed. And I think there's your key point about listening, correct?
Correct. And it's a willingness to take the person at their word. If a person really believes what they're telling you, what would you do if you believed that? So we have to get past the, just throw out any like talking point that people, a hot button talking point, instead of saying, you're crazy, how could you believe that?
Mm-hmm.
What does it mean that you believe that? And what does it spur you to? How do you act given that you believe that? And how do I work with you? Understanding that you honestly believe this thing that I don't believe, but you believe it. All I'm trying to do is to get a person on the other side of the issue to give me that same benefit of the doubt. Like, I'm not trying to play gotcha. I'm not trying to humiliate you or make you look bad. I'm not trying to do any of those things. I truly don't see it your way. But we are both arguing in good faith.
Let's talk about empowering people. And I'm going to bring real life, real time issue to you. The United States of America and the nation of Canada, we're in deep trouble politically, very, very serious trouble. We have a situation where government, whether it's Republican or Democrat, in America is indifferent. In Canada, it's a little bit more different. They're in a much more serious situation than we're in. But what people are seeing, and I'm seeing it myself, but you may see it differently, is government is encroaching on the rights of the people. Government is looking to take away the individual rights of Canadians and American citizens to a point, and it hasn't been that bad here yet, and what I'm going to share with you are facts, to a point where church pastors have been arrested in Canada, bank accounts have been frozen on people who were rightfully, lawfully protesting. We have the Chinese Communist Party already has a great influence in our schools in America and in Canada. So now I'm going to give you, ask you to weigh in on this. So now I come to you and I say, look, I'm angry. Something's got to be done. The government is becoming a government that mirrors the Chinese Communist Party, and the emotion, okay, the emotion begins to build up. My fear is this, and then I'm going to ask you to weigh in on this, is that one thing we need to do as a people, no matter who we are or where we are, is try to lower the temperature. We don't want the teapot to blow up where we have violent confrontations across our countries. And that's why I think you're important. What you're doing is important. What we're doing is important. But how do you get through to people when they say, and they're generally depressed and distressed, and believe me, I get it. But how do we get through to them to say, look, we know Big Brother's watching. They're trying to cripple you. They're trying to damage you. And they're not only trying, but they're succeeding in certain ways. What can I do as a small man or woman in Main Street, USA, or Main Street, Ottawa, Ontario? What do I do to help my country?
Well, I would just to one interest. My students are always shocked to learn that the U.S. is the only country on earth really with a written right to protest and free speech in the Constitution. They think that that's the case everywhere, and they're like blown away when they find out that's not the case everywhere. I always ask people to look at history, look at the long road we've been on, and look at all of the different turning points that we've made it through, and then try to visualize 5-10 years from now. What takes the temperature down is to take the immediacy out of it. So you're furious, you're angry, this is happening. This time next year, what do we foresee? How do we get to next year? Grassroots organizing, people just go door to door and start it. People, if you have the time and the will and the resources to get a group going and get it registered and make a name for yourself. I believe in Canada, you can political parties, you can start with just a few people. I'm not sure if I know that's the case in European democracies, but taking action feels good with a long-term goal. That takes the emotion, I think, to a usable place and not just rage.
Professor.
It's interesting. I worked on something very similar years ago, where you can create roundtables of people coming together in your communities, expand, because you're always welcome to go to a town meeting or a state meeting. You can go to a federal meeting, you can gather information, but you can have roundtables. And an example I'm going to use was years ago for human trafficking in New Jersey. And so you had community and leaders, whether they're from women's centers or professors or legislators, all at round tables, and every table had a round board, and everybody talked about the issues. Homeland Security and the FBI happened to be there, and people came up with ideas that eventually passed this law in New Jersey, signed by former Governor Christie. So you can have a conversation, but you can't be pitted against each other. You can't be pitted against. You have to listen. You have to gather your facts, bring in the experts, and just listen and come together. But this is how we can make a social change, but not when we're all fighting with each other, but when we're listening. And Gerri and I were just talking to 2 townships recently about coming together and also having a conversation about some problems that these towns are having. And this is how you make a difference.
It's extraordinary that you're saying that, because we've been beating that drum for a while. And as a result of that, here in the United States, we've seen the PTA moms getting together and going to school board meetings and doing exactly what you said, trying to get into conversations with politicians. And the same issue in Canada. We're learning that a lot of people at the grassroots level are saying we had it, but we've got to do something about it. Now, getting back to the school board meeting situation here in America, and I'm supposing Canada, you're right. People get together, they're sincere, they work hard, they go to a school board meeting, and these politicians shout them down and muzzle them, and they begin to label them and stereotype them, and it discourages and paralyzes people from wanting to come out and get involved in their government. So I suppose my next question to you is, then that is the time for people to come together and then maybe pick somebody to run for office and to get involved and replace them. Dr. Budd, first you and then the professor.
It happened. It happened in my town. One mom was completely motivated by what she was opposed to in the school board, and she put her name out there, and she just knocked on people's doors and asked if they would host a lawn sign, and she went ahead and she won. But I find it's incumbent upon the people in authority, especially bodies that aren't used to facing the public. It was very sudden, like last year, year before, where the public took an interest in the workings of the school board. And I found that school board members really didn't have the tools to lower the temperature in the room. People had kind of unrealistic expectations of what the school board did. And when the anger took over, you just sort of lose the crowd. But I think that most people, especially if you have the authority, it's incumbent upon you to stay current with these things, to put out fact sheets, to educate your public, the public you're serving, as to the ways in which you are legally able to serve them and the ways in which you are not. And then anybody who is disturbing the peace or making a nuisance of themselves is seen to be in the wrong by more than one person. When the two sides are talking past each other, the school board is saying, these parents don't know what they're talking about, and the parents are saying these people are miseducating our children. We've completely missed how we can get together and serve the children.
Professor, following up on that, all of us are from New Jersey here, and we're familiar with the tragedy in Ocean County, the school district, a few weeks ago. Young girl was apparently being bullied and then beaten savagely. We saw that on video, and sadly, she went home, and I believe a few days later committed suicide. You find out later that apparently there was, some indication that people in the school knew that bullying was going on. In fact, many students came forward, I believe, at a public meeting and talked about bullying and the lack of respect. How do we answer that? How do we answer young people when adults fail them? As both of you say, the leaders fail them. And I got to tell you, I was appalled. And my first reaction was, well, the superintendent, if he is neglectful, or if anyone else in that school district is neglectful, they should only get fired. They should go to jail because their inaction, in my view, resulted in the suicide of a young kid. And sadly to say, it's going on everywhere. I'm sure, you've heard, and I've heard throughout our lifetime, well, this is how you deal with bullies. And to be frank, and I know we might disagree on this, my son asked me once when he was a kid, Dad, this kid's bullying me, how do I deal with him? I said, you're going to punch him in the mouth, you're going to knock him down, and you're going to make sure that he don't get up until he apologizes. My son did that, and he was never bullied again. Now, I'm not advocating that type of violence, but my point is this. When kids are told, well, walk away, don't say anything. If you go to the principal, you'll be a squealer, you'll get beaten. The fact of the matter is, as you say, as adults, our leaders need to do better. So I'd love to hear what you have to say about this topic. First the professor, and then Doctor, if we could go to you.
I was very impressed. I believe it was Perth Amboy. Last week, the students walked out and demanding the administration make their schools safe. That the kids had to tell the adults, we demand a safe school. And I thought that was just awesome. I give those kids a lot of credit to be that brave, that young, to demand it. And I think that we have to get away from boys will be boys and this is a rite of passage. No, you can't go into the workplace and assault somebody. You can't go to school and assault somebody. You can't grow up and go to work and harass people. And kids have to learn this is unacceptable behavior, and there has to be consequences from the beginning. If somebody's bullying, what happens when you grow up and do that? It's not good. And so we have to have really stricter rules protecting the children. We have to it shouldn't even be a conflict. We should have the sense that we are protecting children and we are concerned about their mental health, because every child should feel safe in school so they can learn. Because how are they going to become productive members of society if on one side they're not safe in school and the other side is learning it's okay to be a bully? So we have to start from the preschool and do a lot of training that this is the behavior that's expected, and that's it.
Dr. Bud, before you answer, do you think a lot of this bullying comes from something that we talked about earlier? We have leaders in this country, from national to local level political leaders, who are bullying on the public stage. I mean, it seems to be acceptable. It really bothers me when I see thousands and thousands of people at a rally or political event, and the bullying starts and they cheer. What kind of message is this? So again, mom and dad, and both of you said something interesting earlier, and I agree with you. It boils down to, I think most people are good. Most people want the right things for their families and their kids. But there's a leadership vacuum in this country, and perhaps in maybe a lot of countries around the world. So Dr. Bud, to that point, we need parents and we need people like you two and others that are doing the work you're doing to stand up and be leaders. How does that happen? How do we get that poor mom and dad who are losing sleep over their kids being bullied and the possibility of being beaten in school? Two questions. One, how do we help them through the day? But more importantly, how do we get them to tell us? How do we get them to tell mom and dad? I believe in this case that the parents, justifiably so, said they thought things were fine, that they did ask their daughter how things were going. But for some reason, it was reported she didn't say very much. How do we overcome that?
It's a question of safety. Are you familiar with Maslow's hierarchy, that psychological
Yes.
profile? Like right after food and shelter is belonging and safety. So the kids have to feel safe, and it has to be okay to tell what happened at home. We don't know, because we don't know what happened in the home, but this poor kid was getting her validation from her peers, and that she was so brutally rejected by them. The kids internalize that as worthlessness. Your son is lucky he could come to you and get advice, and he can put it into action, that you have to handle it. You won't be in trouble here at home for however you handle it. That's a message that I think we all need to hear, whether we're parents or peers or coworkers or teachers. Teenagers are prey to their hormones, they're prey to their peer group, and their peer group is the whole world with the internet and the phone. So when they see that people behaving badly get all the attention, all of the comments, all of the likes, all of the clicks, they're learning that that's how to get attention, and that's how to be seen. And that's all we all kind of want, is to be seen. But I think that we have to come up with other ways to see them, ways that are healthier for them.
Both of you, we're just about out of time. You've given a lot of food for thought tonight, a lot of food for thought, which means I got to have you back on in the future.
Thank you.
I plan to do that. And so before we leave, I'd like you all to maybe give some advice to a lot of the people who are watching, who are distressed, who are depressed over, they wonder, like you say, the future. What kind of country is my kid going to live in? What can I do as a parent to protect them? So if we could begin with the professor, and then Dr. Bud, if you could close it out. Professor?
Oh, well, I think for parents, what kind of world would their kids live in? I think you have to always have communication with your children. I think they have to always be able to tell you anything. I have one that's 31 and 26 now, and the door always has to be open, whether they did something really good, whether they were a victim or they weren't good. And watch the news with them. So my son was in about third grade when 9/11 happened, and his father was down on the New York Stock Exchange at the time. So that was terrifying for him, and going back to school. And it was really about, talking to him and how, the government's going to handle this and they're going to make it safe for you, and just being open, watching for, behavior changes with him. My daughter, I think, was only about 4 at the time, so it wasn't really registering with her, but just, you have to talk to them, talk through, watch the news with them. You can't hide it from them, but let them know that there are beings in place to keep you safe. And
Very good. Very good. Doctor?
For me, I would say that I think we have to encourage people and show people and coach and teach people how to own their roles. We all kind of forget that we inhabit certain roles. We are teachers. We are principals. We are the authorities. We are elected officials. We are law enforcement. We are healthcare providers. Like, we have to sort of embrace some of the responsibilities that come with that, especially when we encounter behavior that isn't okay. We try to give people language to implement those kinds of the kinds of guardrails of behavior without, no one wants to give offense, no one wants to start an incident, no one wants anything to become bigger than it is. And there's ways to enforce your role and to help guide the next generation into taking care of this society, without kind of losing it to the internet.
Would you give us your website so people, if they want to get in touch with you?
Yes, it is peaceinaction.professors.com.
Peaceinaction.professors.com. Well, ladies and gentlemen, one of the things that we take pride in here at Campaign for America is that we not only look at the challenges and the issues and the problems we're all facing, but we like to bring solutions. And didn't you get some solutions tonight? Well, extraordinary conversation with you. We're definitely going to have you back. Thank you very much for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, all right, ladies and gentlemen, what an extraordinary conversation. One point I want to pick up on before I bring Wayne Peters on is the fact when they talked about those things that are dividing us. Look, in the United States, I'm thanking the good Lord that we're finally making a lot of headway, which I'll be talking about at the end of the month. Our judicial system seems to be working very well now. Investigations are going on. A lot of those names that you see in the news, hopefully you'll see them walking to jail. And I mean that. So we got a lot going on here. But saying that, it took a lot of work on a part of a lot of people, and we still have a long way to go. There is still a lot of division within this country and within the Republican Party. The name calling has to stop. The division has to stop. I've gotten letters, a lot of mail from Canadians who see the same thing. There's in America and in Canada, and I guess in other countries, this group is rising, this group is rising, this group wants to take control, that group's doing this, that group's doing that. You find out that in a lot of cases, there is a lot of money involved. Did you hear what these two young ladies said tonight about a lot of these people that are getting involved in a lot of different issues? It's money, money, money. Folks, keep in mind that this is about our freedom and about our liberty. So it's very important we stay focused. And I've always said, and I don't say this lightly, you know where our treasure is? Our treasure is with God. Our treasure is in his treasure chest, the treasure of faith, the treasure of trust, the treasure of victory, and the treasure of freedom. Gifts from God. No dollar amount is going to protect us from tyranny. It's going to take prayer. It's going to take supplication. It's going to be work, and it's going to be trust in God. And we must pray every day that he leads us to people that are truly standing up for the cause and not for the amount of money they could make. All right, we got Wayne Peters here. Wayne, I want to thank you so very much for standing by, and I appreciate you joining me tonight.
Always a pleasure, sir.
Well,
Thanks for
we're doing
having
some
me.
great stuff here at Campaign for America because of guys like you who are working very, very hard in Canada. So I'd like to start with this, some of the things that we're hearing now in America. Number one, what's going on with the Royal Canadian Mounted Police and others, and the CIS it is, investigating Trudeau over some Chinese connection?
It's Canadian Security Intelligence Services. That's our top intelligence apparatus here in Canada, and it's been a most interesting set of developments over the last couple of weeks. They have literally been screaming to the best of their ability. They're not really a public engagement agency. Their channels are typically through the parliamentary organizations and the law enforcement agencies, but they've been warning since 2015 already about intervention through foreign operatives and intelligence agencies. And it's really kind of come to a head here in the last couple of weeks with some leaks out of the organization itself, and the establishment's response to it has really, I think, created a tailspin of division amongst the entire government of Canada at the federal level. In that, exactly as I was listening to you guys describing there, this lack of responsibility and respect for others amongst those that are elected to be leaders, showing themselves as nothing more than schoolyard bullies, reverting to name calling and intimidation when a controversial subject matter comes up. So we're seeing that literally playing out at every level, and it seems as if the intelligence operations have had enough of the current regime, and they're being forced to take action themselves. Is almost literally as it's starting to look. There is endless numbers of investigations being launched, allegations being presented, and all in all, this is starting to unravel a long series of interventions by foreign nations and entities in Canada, primarily the CCP, but not limited to those guys. They have a long investment in there, as well as the United Nations and the World Economic Forum, certain factions within there. But it's really, really coming to the fore right now in Canada, to the point where some of the foundational members on both parties, on both sides of the aisle, this is becoming a nonpartisan realization that the wheels are off the bus.
Hey, Wayne, I'm holding in my big smile, and I'm glad you smiled. That forced me to smile. You and I, last time you were on, we talked about a particular issue, and for a year and a half, I've been sharing with the American Canadian people that sooner or later, the supporters of Justin Trudeau in the Parliament are going to jump ship. I see that happening. We're getting word here in America. I don't know if you're getting what we're getting, that there are people in I guess they're liberals, and there's something called the New Democrat Party there, the NDP, that they kind of support Trudeau.
Kind of a coalition, a symbiotic thing, a
Yeah.
non-existent left boot for the Liberal Party.
Well, it may be really non-existent from what we're hearing in a short period of time, because what happens inevitably, and we see it here with Biden, when people get caught, whether they're violating ethics or violating the law, everybody jumps ship. And we predicted that we, as you also, we said that sooner or later, just the people had to stand strong, stand firm, keep it up, keep the pressure on. So we begin to see that happening now. Now we got word, I'm sure your country got word today, that Joe Biden is coming to your country around the end of March. And of course, the reason why he's coming, according to the White House, which we just don't trust to begin with, is to share some intelligence on the need for Canada to get more engaged in the Ukrainian war. Of course, we'll talk about that at another day, but it may be old Joe wants to put his arms around Justin and say, look, don't worry about it, but can you do me a favor? When Justin says, what's that? Biden's going to hand him a laptop. And I don't think Justin is going to want to get involved with that laptop. So now you see these two guys coming together. They're in serious political trouble. And I truly believe that because of the hard work of the Canadian people there, and obviously the hard work of the American people here, the dominoes are beginning to fall.
100%. And this is the one of the things that's kept me driving all along is that insanity is unsustainable. Sooner or later, a lie or a series of lies or a conspiracy, which is a group of people agreeing upon a series of lies to commit crimes, it inevitably always runs out of legs, and then it becomes a matter of people trying to preserve their own skin in these situations. And we've been at this long enough now to see the repetition of the patterns that as they occur, and the smoke and mirrors, the tactics, those kinds of things, and the entire Ukraine fiasco is really quickly running out of steam. With Zelensky attempting to demand your sons and daughters to go and fight his battles over there in a very poorly managed, situation that nobody wins at. That's not a solution, and that's something that we absolutely will look at it in a further day. But what that did, that battle over there, it provides them the smoke to operate and do the other things that they're doing. People have not been necessarily being made aware of things like the new DNA Act of uniting the Western, our continent, North American continent, in shadow deals and these kinds of things that they're trying to perpetrate behind the scenes is not so possible for them with the waning of the Ukraine war. So this is the juxtapose they need right now. They need distractions to keep us from the wheels literally coming off of the bus. And it's not working up here in Canada at this point. Everything that they are throwing at us through the propaganda machines is going from news to the fiction litter box in like minutes at this point, to the point where stalwarts like Canada's only astronaut Mark Garneau is running away from the party, and we're seeing the same thing on the other side of the fence as well. It's becoming nothing more than a he said, she said debate in the parliament in attempts to distract from all of the other things that are piling on Justin Trudeau. And I think their destinies, Trudeau and Biden's, are interlinked to the point of success or collapse. And neither one of them, I believe, are working for the people of their nations, representing them, respecting the offices and the oaths that they took. And accountability will come one day at some point, sooner or later. And I think, we're getting closer and closer to the days of reckoning, shall we say.
You used the word, there's always a pattern. You said that before. And here's something that I believe is extraordinary. And I believe it's going to take place. I don't have facts yet, but knowing how the FBI works, the CIA, and our intelligence agencies work, the RMCP, the RCMP, and other intelligence agencies in Canada are working on an investigation involving Chinese influence in your elections. Well, were we looking in the wrong place? Remember Russiagate? Remember that? Were we looking in the wrong place? And now I'm thinking, I'm sure our intelligence agencies, if not the intelligence agencies, which are very difficult for us to trust at this point, although they may be rebelling against Biden, I wonder if they're going to take some notes from your intelligence agencies. And if there is absolute fact that the Chinese were involved in interfering with your elections, would it be something? If there's evidence there that they were involved in our elections. Now, again, I'm not saying this is fact, but knowing how these organizations work. So as you were speaking, I'm thinking, maybe we were looking in the wrong place all the time. And again, it was the Canadians that took us, like they did with the Freedom Convoy, that put us in the right direction. What do you think of that one?
Honestly, sir, that was one of the reasons why I started talking to American alternatives and journalists a couple of years ago, was literally to let you guys know that you guys are being deceived. You are not seeing some of the dangers that are brewing in your backyard, where your focus and attention was not necessarily at its peak concentration, or you weren't focused on. And there's some bad actors took over up here in the meantime, and this complacency, this expectation of mutual trust between our nations is not something that we can bet our lives on at this point in time, not Americans or Canadians. We, the people, have got each other's backs, but there is such a disconnect between the utopias that think that they rule these nations versus the actual reality of the situation. And that's, it's just, again, comes back to the insanity being unsustainable. I'm so grateful that we're now it's becoming so, the light is becoming so bright on all of these different things. One of the challenges is that it's all happening at the same time, and it makes it very, very difficult to navigate through the onslaught of information and facts and truths that are being exposed. But inevitably, it all points in the same direction, and a continuous repeat of the same patterns. And without looking specifically at doing a deep dive research at America, what we're seeing consistently is all of the nations that are afflicted by these infiltrations have various parallel organizations, groups, nonprofits, NGOs, all of these things that have been establishing themselves for decades. So it's becoming more and more simple to spot the patterns that are repeating themselves within these, all of the nations that have been infiltrated, literally. And that's Close's word, not even mine. Thanks, Close, for providing us that one. But absolutely. This is becoming simpler to see as we're getting more focused, more organized. We're breaking that satanic lullaby of the legacy media, the hold that it has had on the people, and realizing, the reality is starkly different from what they're feeding people. I think that's the path to the revival of our nations. We have lived reaping the benefits of godly nations for so long that it's allowed people to deny it, that we live in God-fearing nations, and to push us to corners of acceptance and equality that are unjust, they are insane, and they are absolutely nothing to do with what our nations are founded upon. So, as individuals, we can no longer accept people that don't adhere to what our cultures and our societies are based upon. We can't force them to believe in God, but they have to start respecting our nations, and we have to start depending that. And the closer we get to respecting our own nations that are built on the the fundamentals of that, the sooner that this insanity ends and we get to healing our nations, because we can't get to healing either unless we take a stop at justice and accountability. And that's not my job to do that, but it's absolutely my job to deliver the people to those that divine the justice.
We had received, and we continue to receive information through some of our sources, that there are political people here in America and in Canada that feel they were blindsided by this alliance that has been created between the Canadian and American people. This would have never happened without live streaming, without the internet. And because of these ways we're able to broadcast, and I've said this over and over again, it reminds me of Radio Free Europe, the Voice of America back in the 40s, except this is the 21st century Radio Free Canada and Radio Free America, Voice of America, whatever. But whatever the case is, they never even dreamed in their wildest dreams that we would be communicating each other as often as we are with accurate, incredible information that is now shedding light on their corruption, on their elitism, on their globalism. And it reminds me of, I look at them now as a bunch of mice just running around and around and around in circles, trying to find a way out. And you mentioned something before. One of the key elements of what we believe will defeat them, and this is very, very important, I know you agree with this on Wayne, is not to forget who we're accountable to, and that's God. Not to forget that we need to be on our knees and praying and praying and praying. And that's how you take the tyrants down. Every week now, we're putting out commercials. You've seen them on Facebook. They're on all of our social media platforms. In fact, they're being shared worldwide. And in those commercials, we talk about the first line of defense against tyranny is seeking God's help. and praying for the power of the Holy Spirit to come down on them. In fact, I got to tell you, Wayne, I said this last week. I guess what we're doing is so effective. When I say we, including the people who are sharing all of our videos, there was one we put out about communist China and how evil they are. I call it the 21st century evil empire. Like 2 days later, my phone is ringing, and you know how the city is under the phone number? It says mainland China. I didn't answer, and I'm sure I didn't take a snapshot of that. I said, well, I guess somebody got a little upset. But you're right. We need to keep in mind that instead of dividing, as the young lady said earlier, who I interviewed, and competing with each other, we need to come together, sit at the same table, get on our knees, say, Lord, bring us together. Show us thy way, O Lord. Teach us thy path. They lose, we win.
Well, you know, we have to stop looking for things to fight about and get back to our core values, because that's why we call them our core values. And when we unite around those core values, we are unstoppable. And it's when we sacrifice or deny ourselves those core values that we literally remove ourselves from the force of strength that we are united. And this is where, again, it comes back to we have that on our side, because the people that seek to oppress us have absolutely nothing but darkness in their souls, and they are programmed automatons, literally clone troopers. And it's all we have to do is to get through that shell of armor with some core values that we know are in there somewhere, and that's where we can make change. And it's important to keep connected to the underground, you know. And I'm glad you keep bringing that up there, Radio Free America, because one of the things that I saw early on, thanks because of decades of research and as a hobby, the things that I studied was the underdogs and how they won sometimes, right? And so I studied the French underground, the White Rose movement. I hate to say it, Ho Chi Minh. You know, these guys were masters at achieving amazing things against all odds through the power of people and community and core values and beliefs. And that's exactly where our path back to the freedom that is ours absolutely exists, I believe.
Look, we're going to go over a few minutes, all right? 5 or 10 minutes, because we have a lot to go over. So, folks, please stay with us. Regarding Bill C-11, I believe I mentioned it last week. I'll mention it again. Our team met with some extraordinary technicians here in America that are involved in broadcasting, etc. We found a way to work around it. So if Trudeau decides to build a 21st century Berlin Wall electronically between the world and the United States and Canada, we found a way to work around it legally within the framework of our laws. Now, your laws may be different at that time, but if he thinks that we are going to obey his law, he's out of his mind. In fact, he probably won't even be in office if we have to get this up and running, and C-11 is probably going to go nowhere. But my point is this. Getting good people together who want to work within the framework of the law, they'll find a way. So I'm not too worried about whether Trudeau does that or not. Of course, we here in America, some ridiculous proposal was made for the Ministry of Disinformation. That was the Biden administration's pattern that came out right after Trudeau decided this 21st century wall. Well, the Ministry of Disinformation lasted as long as the 15-minute city proposal lasted, and that was 15 minutes. And then it went right down the tubes. So my point is this, Wayne. I see victory. I still get a lot of mail and people really distressed and upset. And I know you guys don't get the news media. We get Sarah Palin just came out. We posted it, said that Trudeau's got to go. She's a still well-respected political leader, former governor of Alaska. Our Congress now beginning to voice some concerns about what's going on in Canada. And I attribute all of this that our Congress is getting, that our political leaders around the country are getting, as a result of this vast spread of information that the people are sharing, whether it be from Campaign for America or some of the broadcasts you have in Canada. Believe me, the critical importance of people who are watching, of getting involved, not only physically, or like you on the front lines, but just pushing a button that says share, man, I got to tell you, you're reaching 1 million people.
Well, there's a couple of significant points that I hope some folks like Sarah Palin actually get a chance to hear and understand. Through one of the big bones of contention right now here in Canada is the evidence of CCP tampering in the Trudeau government, which is absolutely confirms a doubt is the legitimacy of his position, which means that Canada legitimately has questionable at best prime minister propped up by a guy that is a registered Khalistani terrorist that is forbidden from entering America because of his ties to terrorist organization. That's Trudeau's left boot. So if any of these folks have questions about how deep and insane this convoluted mess is in here in Canada, we are always looking to share the wealth of information and knowledge that we have up here. And, this makes it a big point for me is that we have illegitimate governments. It's not our duty to follow and behave to illegitimate laws that are meant to harm us. So no, I will not be obeying Mr. Trudeau's Bill C-11 either in any way, shape, or form. And we were building solutions towards that through LGM.news some time ago. And we will make sure that there is a free voice to the world coming out of Canada, absolutely and unequivocally. No tyrant can silence free people forever.
And we will certainly help you do that, Wayne Peters. We will certainly help you do that. Well, we've run out of time, but look, would you mind coming on from time to time? I mean, it's good for people, at least in this country, to hear a lot of facts that you share with us. Would you be able to do that?
Absolutely. This is my cause and purpose in life. I was a little bit late to the game, but the interest as a full-time career journalist. But the interesting part of that is it gave me a clean slate start, pure as the driven snow, as per se. When it comes to telling the truth, that is the only thing that I am interested in, because I only serve the people, and that's what true journalism is supposed to be about, and reviving that is part of the process. So I'm excited and
Wayne,
eager.
let people know about your broadcast. Where can they reach you?
Whatsupcanada.org is my home base. From there I provide content to several different platforms, a couple in the U.S., and we've developed a 2 clicks to content streaming platform at lgm.news, where we've bandied together a whole bunch of us that are fighting the fight irregardless, to find a one-stop place for people to get the best of the best that is out there fighting the good fight.
Wayne, thanks so much. Always a pleasure having you on. We'll see you again, brother.
Thank you very much, sir.
God bless you. Thank you. Well, we talked about heroes, folks. There's another one. I love calling people like Wayne heroes, because they are indeed on the front lines doing a lot of work. But as Wayne said, this work cannot be done without you. Now, here's something we did, folks. You see this mug here? I always drink coffee out of this mug. See what that says there? Campaign for America. We found a way to get cups made like this with Canada underneath. Also T-shirts. Now, why did we do this? Well, it costs money, right, to operate. Well, we figured, instead of just constantly asking for contributions, which I certainly thank all of you who have provided us funding for our broadcasts and our operations, we thought we'd open up a store. And folks, we have a store with different gifts in there and different items that you may like. Now, what we did was the postal, and I'm sure some of you have realized this, the postal cost from the United States to Canada is ridiculous. I mean, you got to go to work for 3 days just to pay the postage. But we found a way that we were able to reduce the postage dramatically by having our distributor of these and manufacturers of these mugs mail them directly to you from their plant. So if you'd like to have one of those T-shirts or mug with Campaign for America, it says Campaign for America. In fact, I don't have one because they're being made as we speak. Campaign for America. Let me get that close there. Under there, Canada, and then it says Let Freedom Ring. We thought it'd be a nice historical memento if you like to have them. All proceeds, all right, all proceeds are going to go to the Campaign for America operations. Now, here is the email right there. You go to Rogers, that's my name, rogersamerica.com. It's going to take you right to the store, direct route right to the store. So if you'd like to purchase them, fine. We'll get them out to you as soon as we could. And like I said, every single dollar that comes into that store goes directly to the operations of Campaign for America. Then we have a great time tonight, folks. We listened to those young ladies who had a lot to offer us. Wayne Peters is always a great patriot. He's loved here in America. Man, I tell you, I'm excited because sooner than I thought, I'm going to be able to cross that border. Joe Biden is finished. He's done. He's over with. Even the Democrats know he's done and over with. Justin Trudeau, he's finished. It's just a little bit of time, maybe a little bit longer time. Politically, he's gone. He might as well go to one of his islands and stay there in retirement because with him, by the way, members of parliament who believe that by sticking with him, they're going to survive. Well, they may end up as his servants on the island that they're going to end up. So that's it, folks. So thank you for joining us tonight. And we've got a lot of good things coming up. By the way, we did put out a message for having a Zoom meeting, meet and greet on Saturday, completely booked out. Folks, I'll tell you, we made room for 25 people because we thought it'd be more intimate, close to 500 requested reservations. So we're going to expand it a little more. So those who emailed, believe me, we're going to have more and more meet and greets via Zoom. I thank you for the response. And those are just informal chats, which are going to talk a little bit for about a half hour, 45 minutes, get to know each other. And you know what? We can't physically be across the border, but we could electronically. What do you think of that? Remember, folks, keep everything in prayer. Without the power of the Holy Spirit, we're not going to go anywhere. But with the power of the Holy Spirit, we're going to a place. Oh, yes. We're going to a place where you're going to hear three words from everybody in that place. Let freedom ring. Thank you. God bless you all. Have a great weekend. See you in about 7 days. Good night.